Okay, so I'm on the train from my parents' house back to Nuremberg to do some final touches on the van. Can't wait to tell you more about that, but let's go back a week or so to a weekend from hell. I had so many troubles with this van. It was just a total disaster. Let me show you. Let's start by looking at what happened when I tried to get rid of the play in my transmission shifter. What should have been simple turned into a disaster. Okay, so we're going to see if I can fix all the slop in the shifter. So I'm going to put it into second gear, and now we're going to measure the amount of lateral play in second gear. There shouldn't be a lot of side-to-side motion when you're in gear, but there is. So, looking at this, the number 4 you can see is lined up with about 5 inches, and that's all the way to the all the way to the right. Number 4 lined up with 5 inches. All the way to the left, it's lined up with about 8 inches. Okay, so that's 3 inches of side-to-side play in second gear. We'll see if we can fix that with some new bushings. Okay, so I've removed this center console thing, and now we can see the shift mechanism. So you can see how the rods move in and out as I shift. Alright, let's see what's going on here. Look at all that slop. Alright, so I've identified the source of the slop. Check this out. You can see right there, there's actually no bushing there. There's literally not a bushing in place. Look at that. Of course there's a lot of slop. It's missing a bushing. It's just this rod that's just sort of bouncing around in this hole here. You can actually see the remnants of the bushing just disintegrated. That's it right there. Ugh. We've got new bushings in place on both sides. We're in second gear. Let's see how much less slop we have. So the 4 is lined up with 4 inches here. Well, let's see here. All the way to the left. Okay. So the 4 is lined up with roughly 5 inches. And then all the way here, 4 is lined up with a little under 3 inches. So 2 1/4. So we lost 3/4 of an inch there. Now let's see if we can replace the bushings actually on top of the transmission, so underneath this vehicle. Okay, so there's one bushing coming from one of the cables, and then the other bushing, oh boy, I don't even know where that is. Back there somewhere. Gulp. How am I going to get to that? I don't know. But I'll start with this one. So you'll notice how the shifter cable goes to this bracket that spins a shaft that goes into the transmission and changes gears. Well, on the top of that bracket holding the bushing in is the steel washer that was so hard to get off, it caused a major problem. Pretty bad news here. I actually broke a piece of my transmission. You can see that shift lever dealio is actually broken. And it's aluminum, so I can't just weld it back together. This is not good. My gosh, did I make a critical error. I broke this piece of my transmission. This is part of the shift linkage. It is cast aluminum, so I can't weld it back together. There's no way in heck I can find this part anywhere. It's a random piece of a Chrysler transmission in Germany somewhere. So I'm going to have to fabricate this part here. Yeah. So this hole right here goes into the transmission. And then this rod here is where the bushing goes for the shift linkage. So as you shift, you pull a cable and that pulls this and it rotates the shaft here that goes into the transmission. Anyway, I got to get to fabricating. Okay, so I went to the store, picked up this piece of steel for €4 and grabbed a welder and a drill press and went to town. So I've got 3 pieces of steel here that I've welded together. I have drilled 3 holes in it. You can see the original piece here has a hole there for a dowel pin that goes through the transmission shaft. So there's another big hole there. So I drilled, you can see the small hole for the dowel pin. the main hole for the transmission. On this side, this is where the bushing rod goes. So I just actually drilled a hole and welded the back side of it to keep it in place. So we'll see if this works. It should, hopefully. Here's a look at what the bracket looked like just after I'd welded it up. Jakob made some precise measurements and began drilling the holes. He is a bit of a genius. Watch him at work. Jakob is punching my horribly welded shift bracket.
I welded it.
Thanks for trying to take the blame, but it was me. Now we're going to try to drill some holes and try to make it look as close to this as possible. Jakob, the genius at work. Alright, so it ain't purty, but it'll work. I took 2 pieces of steel, I welded them back to front to create some thickness for a dowel pin hole. Then I welded 2 thinner pieces of steel to that to create the shape of a Z. Then I drilled some holes and welded this bushing nipple to it. And then I hit it with some paint while it was still burning hot. The paint boiled and it looks hideous, but it'll work. Okay, so you can see the part that I made here. You can see there's a little bit of RTV over the dowel pin, but there's a dowel pin that's holding the bracket that I made to the shaft going into the transmission. And then you could see this new bushing on the shift cable. Everything seems pretty tight, and we'll see how it shifts. Okay, that was way harder than it should have been. Replacing the 2 bushings up here got me about 3/4 of an inch less slop. But then I replaced 2 bushings on the transmission underneath the car and broke a stupid bracket. Had to weld up a new bracket from scratch out of steel that I bought from a local store and drill holes, and it was a huge pain in the ass. This thing better shift. I don't know if the bracket is the right dimensions or if the holes are perfect. So I don't even know if this thing shifts. Let's see. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it does shift. Now the question is, what about the slop? So we were using second gear as our datum before, so let's go into second gear. Okay, let's see. All right, let's see how much slop we have now. Okay, all the way to the left, 4 is lined up. Okay, all the way to the left, the 4 is lined up with the 9. Now, all the way to the right, it's lined up. It's about a 1/4 inch. No. Let's see. 4 is lined up with a 9. All the way to the left, all the way to the right. 4 is lined up with 8.5. 1.5 inches of play instead of 3. I got rid of 1.5 inches of slop in the shifter. And you know what? This feels freaking great. It does. Look at this. Super tight. Very little lateral play, especially compared to before. I mean, there's some, but it's very little. This thing, oh wow, this really does feel freaking awesome. Hell yeah! I mean, I bought this thing because it's a diesel manual, and if the manual sucked, that really would have been a bummer. But look at this. This thing's fixed. So the broken transmission part wasn't the only disaster from that weekend. I also had some major problems with my CV axles. So this one that we're going to look at now is the passenger side, and getting it apart was true hell. But it wasn't the major problem. The major problem happened when I took this thing on the street. We'll get to that in a bit, but first, the passenger side CV axle. Okay, I want to show you what a failed wheel bearing looks like up close. So when the wheel's on, you can shake the wheel up and down when that shouldn't happen. So that's play in the bearing, and here's what it looks like up close. Well, not as enlightening as I thought this footage would be, but You get it. There's some slop, bearings are shot, etc., etc.
Pay with the first one.
Right. Look at this. The wheel bearing is so bad that it's coming apart. Andreas, you want to Oh wow, look at that. Nice.
Not good.
Yeah.
Got some glitter in there.
Anyway. Alright. Taking out the axle shaft on this side. I'm going to replace the outer CV because I did the other side and I figured might as well do both sides. It was a good call because looking at this one, I noticed that the boot doesn't have a clamp on it. It's just sort of sliding all over the place. So that definitely let moisture in. So now I'm just going to pop this axle out. I say that as if it's just going to be basic, like super easy. But maybe it won't. Maybe this is going to be a pain in my butt. I'm just, when in doubt, hammer out, you know? What's that? Okay. Hammer. All right. Here it is. Oh, a little bit of oil, I think. I'm about to remove the passenger side axle, which is way longer than the driver's side, because the offset differential. Oh yeah, look at this thing. It's a beast. And here's the lack of a clamp on the outer CV. Now, watch. What I'm going to do now is pound the outer CV off. Hopefully it'll just come right off.
Okay, I'm gonna pause there.
Oh my gosh, Andreas and I just went to town on this CV axle. We hammered the crap out of it for like 20 minutes. We got grease all over ourselves. And now we just ended up destroying it. Ball bearings went everywhere. And I still have to get this part off. No. We're pushing the van because clearly I installed the front axle shaft in a manner that I would not consider proper. Okay, so let me just pause here. We're pushing the van because we decided to go for a test drive after installing the CV axle. My friend Andreas was at the wheel. He put the car in reverse, cranked the steering wheel, gave it some gas, and nothing happened. Here's why. It's bad down there. Just line it up with the garage. Okay. That's good. Thank you. Oh boy. Okay. My friend Andreas was driving and he broke the van.
Come on!
Look at this. So, I'm sure it's a coincidence that the part that I just installed failed. You can see that the shaft actually came out of the CV joint, which tells me that it wasn't actually clicked in place. And actually, there's no clip here anymore, which tells me maybe I didn't put the clip in. I don't know. And anyway, there was some severe idiocy on my part that led to this. So yeah, now I need to fix it. So upon closer inspection, the clip was still in the shaft, but I hadn't shoved the shaft hard enough into the CV joint, so it didn't click and lock into place. So when Andreas turned the steering wheel, the shaft just slid right out. Ruined the boot, sent grease everywhere. It was a total waste of time, just like breaking that bracket and having to fabricate it from scratch. And just like the passenger side CV joint, which was such a pain in the butt to get apart. I should be on the road touring Europe right now, but instead, I'm headed back to the van to fix it.